This is the Private Officer Beat Radio with Rick McCann at the microphone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Private Officer Beat, a production of Private Officer International and Blue Ram Media, LLC. This morning we definitely have quite a few things that we need to talk about, and unfortunately, well, several of them are tragic. Many of you are aware, I'm sure, about Hurricane Helene, who hit Florida, devastated much of the lower eastern seaboard. It did not stop in Florida. It proceeded through Georgia and the Carolinas, leaving a large path of destruction. And right now, about 100 people or more have been confirmed to be dead, while hundreds of others have been injured. Millions and millions of dollars worth of destruction, property damage. At one time, there were close to 10 million people in the southeast region without power. And tragically, 2 of those that died in directly related storm deaths were security officers that were on duty. In Macon County, North Carolina, which is close to the mountain region, a court security officer on duty on Friday left his work to go and grab his lunch, and his vehicle was swept into a river, a raging river that had overtaken part of the road. A witness who called 911 told them that the vehicle was quickly sinking into the river and being taken downstream. Macon County Sheriff's Office, the fire department, a helicopter, and even a specialized swift water rescue team were all deployed immediately, but could not locate them before sundown. The rescue team returned early the next morning on Saturday, and security officer Jim Lowe's body was recovered from that raging river. I say this with great sorrow, great concern. Everyone at the Sheriff's Department, he was a civilian court security officer, said that he was so likable and so helpful, and that his absence will truly be felt. And in a neighboring state, in Georgia, another security officer died directly related to the storm. An on-duty security officer at a business near the South Carolina border was trying to remove a large tree out of the way so that employees could come into work. He had a heart attack. Another security officer performed CPR, but by the time that he arrived at the hospital, he had succumbed to the heart attack. The local media has not identified him yet, but we have reached out and hope to have his name soon. Across the southeast, it has been devastating. We know of at least one other security officer who was injured on duty. I'm sure that, as with many hurricanes that I have been associated with, responded to, the death toll will continue to rise for quite some time, as bodies will be recovered in homes and businesses and in places where the water has swept them downstream. Security officers are on the front line, as I've stated for many years, and this is one of those situations. where security officers didn't get to stay home. They still had a job to do. They had to protect the property, the lives. Security officers working at residential communities, nursing homes, other types of businesses and stores that had to remain open even in the midst of such a storm. As the hurricane dissipated in Florida and raced up what we call the 95 corridor, Interstate 95, into the Carolinas and Georgia, before it took even a more westerly turn, a sharp turn, many areas were devastated. A tropical storm moves at 70 miles an hour. It can do a lot of damage, bring down a lot of power lines, trees that block the road, and many are injured and killed long after the hurricane category is no longer part of the equation. It just so happens that this hurricane struck during the annual Private Officer Memorial Week, which is the third week every year of September. And unfortunately, 2 names have been added to the officer down list, to the memorial. And there may even be more, and we're paying close attention. Although we have reduced staff, we're still monitoring over 3,000 news sources, getting all sorts of press releases every day, and we'll continue to monitor to see if any other on-duty security officer was injured or killed in the line of duty. I have a lot to talk about. When I come back, well, we'll just continue on down the road with the conversation. And today, in our training topic, we're going to do a quick review of trespassing. There's been some issues in the media where security officers in several different states and situations have incorrectly got involved in situations involving potential trespassers. They wound up using force and so forth. We'll talk about that at the bottom half of the program. You're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector, and I'll be right back.
There was the explosion, and I remember just opening my eyes, and it got both of my legs. I had surgery after surgery, and what's going to happen next? The Wounded Warrior Project said, look, brother, everything's going to be okay. 3 months from now, 4 months from now, a year from now, you'll be fine. I don't know if I would be as well adjusted as I am now if it wasn't for them.
To learn more, call 1-877-832-6997 or visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
If the water is flowing and the low water crossing, turn around, turn around. Don't risk your life, don't do it. You might not make it through it. Turn around, turn around. Might take a little time to heed the warning signs. Turn around, turn around, turn around, and don't drown.
Welcome back for this September the 30th, Monday morning edition of the Private Officer Beat, broadcasted live from the Blue Ram Studios. And we are talking today about, well, the remnants of Hurricane Helene, the officers who were injured or killed because of it, and a whole lot more. I just said a moment ago before going to the first break, the POI Memorial Week is every September, the third week of September. And unfortunately, we really haven't gotten out there the way that we used to. Before COVID, we really hit a number of places and had some high-profile memorial services that really attracted many local and national politicians, law enforcement, and others in public safety, and we really are trying to step up our game in that area again. I have really been surprised at the lack of response or donations or involvement in private security. It really seems to have gotten worse over the years, and it's not just our organization. I've talked to several other organizations. They don't have the numbers that they used to. They don't have people coming to the chapter meetings monthly, and that's unfortunate. We really need to change that, because without getting together, without working as one, without being able to fellowship and train together, it's going to hurt us as an industry, as a profession. And with the number of increased uses for private security, things that you never would have expected 20 years ago. I mean, look at COVID. Security was used to, check masks and make sure people had inoculations and all of that, type of stuff. And unfortunately, security has been placed in between law enforcement and what security used to be. We really need to understand that we are much better and stronger, and as a unified group, whether that be, all loss prevention or all uniform security or both together collaboratively, we have to get back to, or maybe even really escalate, being more unified. It's just, it's one of those things that we have to do. One of the things I want to talk about today, also coming up right after the next break, teenage correction officers. Several states now using barely minor age children, teenagers, just above that legal threshold of an adulthood, as correction officers, and how some have responded to it, and how some teenage correction officers have responded to it, what they say about the job and the opportunity, what they like and don't like. I'm also going to be talking, when I come back from the next break, about a brand new effort that we have put together with our school, Armor College, and several other groups. We're going to begin this year sponsoring and putting together regional public safety academies just a weekend. Some police and fire departments across the country have put these together to educate and entice teenagers into thinking about public safety professions, firefighter, EMS, and law enforcement. But I'll explain further our process, what it's going to be. Across the country, we're reading more and more about how security is being involved and how technology is being involved. I want to talk a little bit about our high-tech surveillance center and how you can get involved in that. You're listening to the Private Officer Beat Radio, and I will be right back.
Distracted driving is dangerous, but some people just can't seem to help themselves. There's the steering wheel propper, the sneak-a-peeker, the fast roller, the nightlighter. And it's not long until they become the fender benderer, the got-a-ticketer, the veering off the road, the driver who kills someone. Enough with the phones already. Just put them down.
Are you looking for the finest private security officer training in the Charlotte metropolitan area? Do you need PPS qualifications in armed or unarmed training? Or maybe you're over there across the line in South Carolina and you need the SLED training. Well, we've got the right training at the right time for you. Premier Training Academy, located at 5624 Executive Center Drive, Suite 142 in metropolitan Charlotte, North Carolina. Give them a call today, 704-806-4933. They also offer firearms training, personal protection, first aid and CPR, and so much more. Call John at 806-4933.
As most of us know, across the country, law enforcement has really had a tough time recruiting for at least the last 6 or 7 years, and the military also having a real downturn in recruiting people who, a volunteer army, military, we went that way after the draft because so many people were interested in supporting the country, defending the country, and same goes for law enforcement. I've mentioned this before, but in my initial application and testing processes many years ago, there were hundreds and hundreds, and in some cases even more than 1,000 people that were testing for law enforcement positions. They may have had just a few, 5 to 10, but hundreds and even thousands wanted those positions. Now, many law enforcement agencies barely can get a few, although in the last year they say things have gotten better. Police academies, which actually were dormant, stood still for several years without even holding an academy class, now are beginning to fill up or at least have a larger number of recruits. But in Texas and several other states, they've come up with, kind of a clever way of enticing and recruiting folks for the corrections unit of the jail. In Smith County, Texas, last year, the inmates were quite surprised by who had been recruited, who had graduated from the Corrections Academy, and who was now employed in the county lockup, the county jail. Teenagers. Many people in the county were skeptical when the sheriff of Smith County said, "Look, we're having trouble filling these jobs. But I know that if I go out and talk to graduates or graduating students of high school and show them how this can be an entry-level step up to other things such as law enforcement or federal law enforcement, I could probably recruit the people that I need to fill these slots." And many laughed. Obviously, you probably would too. Many were skeptical. Many said it wouldn't work. But Justice Taylor, a young 18-year-old recent graduate of the local high school, heard the speech and decided this might be a way for her to make money to go through college, and her end game was to be a homicide detective, and she thought if she did well in this position and continued to climb the ladder, she could eventually wind up in that end goal of being a homicide detective. As more and more shortages for law enforcement, and by the way, correction officers are often not considered to be part of the law enforcement profession, but they indeed are. In many, many states, jailers or correction officers are sworn law enforcement and have the same law enforcement authority as their sheriff's department. In 2023, 68 18-year-olds obtained their correction officer license in Texas. 17 times the number who obtained their license a decade ago, according to the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, the agency that administers the jailer's license exam and certifies the trainers. Proponents said 18-year-olds were win-win. Not only would they graduate from high school and then go on to graduate from the Corrections Academy, which, by the way, is 120 hours. They would then be able to maybe move into the role of a deputy sheriff if that's the direction that they wanted to go. Criminals are crafty con artists, and 18-year-olds are naive, said Thomas Washburn, the executive director of Law and Public Safety Education Network. And there were other critics that came on board and said, no way, Jose, should we have teenagers in jail with these sometimes very serious, violent criminals? The jail both is the pretrial facility and also where many misdemeanor and some felons are, housed to serve their sentence. And although there are many naysayers, Smith County's Chief Deputy Jimmy Jackson said, sure, there's some who are not mature at 18, and there's some adults who are not mature at 30. But we have been lucky to pick the mature teens, those who were easily put through, graduated the academy, the cream of the crop, he said. That's who we're hiring. And now, other counties, Odessa just got on board. Ector County just got on board. And there are other states that have contacted Texas to begin their own academy with teenagers. You might say this sounds kind of strange and maybe dangerous, but since law enforcement has had such a hard time recruiting, they also have lowered their age. Some states long ago lowered from 21 to 19, and now there are some states who will hire 18-year-olds to become police officers. While this may be dangerous, some say if they can join the military at 17 with a signature, 18 if they sign up themselves, why not law enforcement? Military members for many years have served on the front line, gone to battle, given their life. So proponents of the idea say this is just the same. It's on the same level. I'm on the fence because I know how violent a correction facility, even a holding jail cell, can be. But I also know that many 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and 20-year-olds are very mature, well-educated, do well in school, in scholastics, and they're up for the challenge. So I'll continue to monitor, but this is unfortunately the way that many law enforcement agencies are having to go to get the manpower that they need. And yes, on the other side of the coin, there have been some young officers killed in the line of duty. Some because of a lack of experience, maybe their age, maybe they were naive in some way. But all in all, many teens have done well. We're going to take another quick break. Today we're talking about kind of a refresher, trespassing. What is trespassing? What's your authority to engage when someone is trespassing? What kind of force can be used? Just a refresher after seeing a number of incidents. You're listening to the Private Officer Beat Radio, and I'll be right back.
You're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector right here on the Private Officer Radio Network. Now don't go away because we are coming right back when we've got a whole lot more right here on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Life is precious. Ask any of these people. They've been given a second chance at life through organ and tissue donation. But there are more than 84,000 Americans waiting for life-saving transplants. 17 people die every day waiting. I didn't know this until I lost my best friend, Lyric. She gave the gift of life to 5 people. That's why I've become an organ donor, too. One decision saves so many lives. Donate life.
I was just going to the grocery store.
Seatbelt violators, beware.
I forgot to put it on.
If you're pulled over because you've broken the law.
Oh, it's so uncomfortable.
And you're not wearing your seatbelt.
It's broken, but I was going to have it fixed.
No matter what your excuse is, you will get a ticket in addition to the ticket for your original violation.
Click it or ticket? That's pretty easy to remember.
This morning I am sitting here at the news desk looking at all of the news that continues to pour in to our office day and night. And while we're a bit understaffed at the moment, we're doing the best we can to peruse, identify the news that we need to distribute, such as a security officer was shot over the weekend and 3 others also shot outside of a Houston, Texas nightclub. The security officer was injured around 4 a.m. According to police, a security officer who may or may not have been armed, we don't know, was trying to break up a fight when gunshots rang out. He was struck in the leg and transported to an area hospital. We don't know his condition, but we do know right now no arrests have been made. 2 suspects arrested, staying in Texas, by the way, in San Antonio, in a string of robberies that including the assault of several security officers at the Rolling Oaks Mall. Austin Mendoza, 20, and Marcelo Ojeda, 19, charged with aggravated assault and robbery after they robbed a jewelry store and assaulted mall security, and then several hours later showed up at another mall, again assaulting the unarmed security. A security officer's firearm accidentally went off and shot him while he was at a Milwaukee high school football game. The unnamed security officer was transported to the hospital. This occurred at the Wisconsin Lutheran High School. According to the principal, the security guard was taken by ambulance, but the severity of his injuries are unclear. A Walmart security officer in Nashville, Tennessee was pistol whipped over the weekend by a shoplifter. Darnay Drinks was captured after stealing $1,808 worth of merchandise from Walmart. According to law enforcement, he entered the Walmart on Charlotte Pike twice during a week. The second time he took out a pistol while he was trying to escape and beat the security officer. In North Carolina, a new law just went into place starting October 1st, tomorrow. It requires that all hospitals have armed law enforcement in the emergency department. Not armed security, but armed law enforcement. Now, there are a number of hospitals in North Carolina that do already comply with this law. They've had armed security and armed campus police on their properties for many years. Many systems, like the University of North Carolina Health in Chapel Hill, the Greenville-based ECU Health, and other state-run medical facilities already have their own. A Colorado hospital has settled a lawsuit with the family of a man who died after an altercation with security officers. According to the lawsuit, they allege that the hospital security officers used excessive force while restraining a patient who died. The terms of the agreement has not been announced and not made public, but the attorneys for the family said that the man died at St. Mary Corwin Hospital in Pueblo, Colorado. This happened in February 2021. Security officers were charged with negligent homicide. The charges were later dropped due to insufficient evidence. We want to make sure that you continue getting the news. Check out our daily blog at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com. In Massachusetts, a school and a library have both decided to hire private security. At the library in Somerville, they considered police or security, but now have hired private security officers because it's right next to a school and there's been a number of incidents. A security officer in Rochester, New York was shot. This occurred at a nightclub/bar. He has non-life-threatening injuries. The 37-year-old man was breaking up a fight when the suspect took out a gun and fired at him. A family of a shooting victim in Horry County, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach area, has settled a lawsuit. They claim that 23-year-old Starquan Washington died as a result of an incident with bar security. The security officer faced involuntary manslaughter and eventually got home detention. A man wanted for more than 20 years for murder in Virginia was stopped for a very minor traffic offense. He ran a red light. Well, unfortunately for him, Timothy Hickerson is now in jail awaiting extradition to Virginia for a murder that he committed in 2010. He murdered 23-year-old Shane Donahue. Then he fled, eventually settling in Florida for more than 14 years. Investigators say the officer who made the traffic stop just didn't feel right about the situation. His instinct said there was something more to what was going on. Hickerson had been living in Palm Coast area of Florida since 2022 after moving around in numerous states, and he's in custody waiting extradition. San Antonio students rushed to a Texas Hill security officer who shot himself accidentally with a gun. A group of junior ROTC students from Breckenridge High School in Marble Falls, Texas, immediately responded after the security officer accidentally shot himself. They began administering first aid, including applying a tourniquet to the leg, calling 911, ultimately saving the life of the security officer, who has not been identified. He was airlifted and he is in good and stable condition. NYPD continues to deploy drones throughout the city. In their latest deployment, they have multiple drones flying in and around Central Park to combat rising crime. If you've ever been to Central Park, it's huge. It's not your normal little city town park. It is expansive. It includes a zoo and many other attractions, and there's always been a lot of crime, murders, robberies. Now the drones are part of a new first responder program that NYPD rolled out a year or so ago. Deputy Commissioner Kaz Daughtry says the drones are enhancing public safety, multiplying officers, and really overall has been very successful. And keeping up with technology, Jefferson County, Colorado, has recently begun using artificial intelligence in their 911 center. The technology deciphers what's happening and writes it all down in the computer screen and analyzes statements to help dispatchers better understand the urgency and the totality of the situation. Other departments throughout the country have also added AI for report writing and dispatching. A 34-year-old man has been charged with threats to shoot and kill a hospital security officer in Spokane, Washington. Marcus Burt, 34, has been charged with 3 counts of felony harassment after police say he threatened to shoot and kill several Providence Sacred Heart security officers. Burt is being held in jail waiting for his court appearance. You may have heard this. We announced this a few days ago, but in Portland, Oregon, a jury has awarded the family of a man killed by a security guard $20 million. Freddie Nelson Jr. was lawyering around the parking lot of a Lowe's home improvement in North Portland in 2021 when he encountered security guard Logan Gimbo. Gimbo was arrested and convicted of second-degree murder in the unlawful illegal shooting and sentenced to life in prison. But now, the family has won a lawsuit, and they have been awarded $20 million. They had originally asked for $25, but agreed to $20. Police have taken a man in Tulsa, Oklahoma into custody after he shot a security officer at a convenience store called Quick Trip. Police said that they were pulling into the Quick Trip themselves when they heard a gunshot and was flagged down by a store employee. A security guard was in a fight with someone who was kicked off the property and then attacked the security officer, and the man, identified as Brian Logan, took out a gun and shot the security officer. Police were able to take him into custody and quickly administered first aid for the injured security officer, who currently has non-life-threatening injury. In Louisville, Kentucky, a community has rallied around the school security officer who was seriously hurt while breaking up a fight last week. The community said the Jefferson County Public School security officer is beloved. Even a retired teacher, Jill Conover, who is a friend and a colleague of the security officer, Charles Nichols, said he's one of the best, and everyone just loves him. He was beaten while breaking up a fight. He has broken ribs, punctured lung, and other injuries. He's still in the hospital, but he's doing quite well, and everyone wishes him the best. In California, the governor has recently signed legislation that says that police may use all sorts of military weaponry when they're deployed to riots. Complete opposite of just a few years ago. And even the University of California campus police will also get new military equipment in wake of the many protests. These include drones, 20 semi-automatic rifles, 10,000 rounds of less lethal options, more new weapons, gadgets. Baltimore is using more security officers to patrol their city. With a reduction of police on the force, private security companies have been called in to patrol parks, government buildings, and now city streets. The mayor of Baltimore, Maryland, says it's worked out. They're already patrolling Johns Hopkins, a large medical center, Inner Harbor, the downtown Baltimore business areas. Security officers make a good patrolling, monitoring, surveilling, responding to suspicious activities, investigating security incidents, recording observations and information, contacting police. Right now, Admiral Security Service, a company in Baltimore, Maryland, has the contract. An armed security officer has been fired after leaving his firearm in the bathroom of a school. Authorities say that the gun was found at the Jones Academy of Fine Arts and Dual Language. Unfortunately, the security officer used the restroom, evidently took out his firearm and left it there someplace. A Brinks armored security officer has shot and killed a robbery suspect in North Carolina. In Guilford County, the sheriff's office says that the security officer returned fire during an armed robbery last week in Wissett, North Carolina. Deputies said that he had no choice but to use lethal force during a robbery near the Food Lion. Anyone with information is asked to call the Guilford County Crime Stoppers. We've got a lot of news. You can read it at Private Officer Breaking News. Check out the Facebook page and Twitter. And please consider donating to help keep us afloat. Go to privateofficer.org, click on the officer down, and you can donate You can even specify what area of the business, whether it's for the memorial, whether it's not for the security officers who are killed in the line of duty, families, or others. Just let us know. We will take another break, and we're going to be talking now about trespassing and some of the things that have come up recently.
Slow down.
Slow down and move over.
And move over. When you see lights,
Best. Or reflectors.
please, give us some room. Slow down and move over. When you need us,
We've got your back.
you have ours.
You got our back?
You got ours? You got our back? Please, slow down.
And move over.
Who knows what a child will grow up to be? It's one of the coolest things about kids. The unknown, the potential, the chance to do or become whatever they can imagine. But what if something happens during childhood that stops them from reaching that potential? Did you know that preventable injuries are the #1 killer of children in the United States? And around the world, one child dies from a preventable injury every 30 seconds. But the important thing to remember about preventable injuries is that they're preventable. We can do something to stop them. Things to make sure kids get the chance to be creative and play. The chance to take chances and explore. The chance to fall down and get back up. Help us give your kids, and every kid, the chance to grow up, reach their potential, and become whatever they can imagine. Learn how at safekids.org.
I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time reviewing something that I think everyone should know. But unfortunately, there have been a number of incidents in recent weeks, and actually in the last couple of years, thinking back really since COVID, but trespassing has always been one of those both civil and criminal situations that security officers find themselves getting involved in. Whether that's somebody who's coming in to an apartment complex or a department store after being warned, or what have you. Some consider trespassing just nothing more than a nuisance. Others believe it's a serious issue. It impacts residential communities, people coming in who don't belong there. They could be there for, they could be up to no good. They could be there for selling dope. They could be there wanting to rob you, break in your vehicles, homes, apartments, whatever. Others say it's very serious and impacts businesses of all sizes across all industries, and I agree with that. People loitering around on the property, whether it's commercial or residential, even if they have no criminal intent, doesn't look good. It causes some who either are trying to do business there or live on the property to be afraid. It causes them to even turn and leave and not do business with that company. Myself, I have seen how both criminal trespassing and trespassing without any intent has harmed the business and the residential communities, regardless if they're low income or the most highest income. It doesn't matter. People loitering around tend to be up to no good, or sometimes they're not, but they look like they are up to no good. Businesses say that there are potential legal liabilities. I have talked about this repeatedly. We have a liability when somebody's trespassing on the property if they hurt someone. We have a liability, believe it or not, if the trespasser slips and falls down a set of stairs, gets injured, slips on the ice in the parking lot. Well, that's our liability because we allowed that person to trespass. We allowed that person to enter the property even though he did not belong there. So it's a significant and far-reaching impact on security officer companies, businesses, residential communities, property management companies, and even the security officers themselves. But you know what? Many just continue looking at trespassing as, it's just, it's harmless. He's not doing anything. He's not bothering anybody. Oh, so what? They're sleeping on the property in the woods behind the shopping center. Oh, so what? They're sleeping in an abandoned vehicle on the apartment complex. They're not hurting nobody. Everybody's got to be someplace. Everybody's got to live someplace. But that's a problem. Legally, civilly, it's a problem. If we knowingly allow a trespasser to remain on the property and they rob someone, they injure someone, they hurt someone, or even themselves, that could be a real potential huge liability to mitigate. The real impact of trespassing can oftentimes be unseen. We don't really look deep into what could happen with that person unlawfully on our property. Unwanted intruders on any premises, any property, pose an immediate threat to safety and security. Whether you want to believe it or think it, they do. Many trespassers have malicious intent, such as stealing. Many are there just to vandalize, some maybe even to physically do harm to others. Many years ago, there was a conversation at a shopping mall that we had an account with, and they began allowing people, first it was the elderly, the seniors, to come into the mall and walk around the mall before the mall opened for the first hour. They never had the individual sign a waiver or a release saying that if they are injured, it would be of no fault of the mall and that they would be responsible solely, the individuals would be responsible solely. They never had anything in writing. And then they began allowing other folks to come in and jog around the mall, and walk around the mall, hang around the mall. And it got to be where there was quite a population, quite a few. I don't want to guess at the number, but there were times when we had well over a couple hundred people roaming the mall before the mall opened. And it became really a litigation issue. And eventually, the management company of the mall said, no, that's it, we can't do this. For liability reasons, we just, there were a couple of minor incidents, nothing too much. A lady's purse came up missing. A few little incidents here and there. But overall, just the potential for malicious actions or activity, the theft possibilities, maybe even a situation where somebody came in, looked like they were just like everybody else, but then they were really setting up the place for a robbery. We have to understand that trespassing is a crime. Trespassing poses bigger problems such as, robberies, sexual assaults, rapes, even shootings, drug activity. We don't know. I've always had a very strict rule in my security businesses and law enforcement not to allow people to loiter, trespass, hang around, because usually that leads to other things. I know a number of states have laws that, you can't loiter, you can't hang around on the street, you can be arrested for that after certain hours especially. Many businesses, security companies, clients, they don't look at the financial toll that trespassing can have, but it really can have a substantial financial toll. You get someone who is there illegally and they are involved in illegal activity, like I said, there's all kinds of consequences. So, what can we do? What's our job? We can first give them a verbal warning, obviously. Hey, we don't allow people loitering. I'm sorry, but you can't hang out here. You're going to have to move along. In some cases, especially in residential and some commercial locations, they have signs up. No loitering, no trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. Generally, states have 3 ways that we can warn someone that they don't belong there. Number 1, verbally, of course. We can tell them, no loitering, no trespassing, you have to leave the property. Number 2, we can do it in writing. We can give them a written trespass warning, which often helps. It's something that I have used for more than 30 years, especially in residential communities, low-income neighborhoods, and other businesses where there's a lot of loitering or trespassing, and they work. We take a picture, we put it in our file, we put it in the computer system, the database, and if they come back, we pull it up and we arrest them. And the third way, and by the way, many people who own land, they have signs throughout their property that says no hunting, no fishing, no trespassing, violators prosecuted. Well, at that point, we don't have to give them any secondary warning. They can immediately be arrested, detained, apprehended. If you don't have arrest authority, but you can detain people, then that's the next step. You can detain them, notify law enforcement, and then prosecute that person, or persons, as it may be. So we can warn them verbally, we can warn them by writing either a trespass warning or posted property, and then we can arrest them. We'll have the police come and arrest them. It's always been one of those areas where we have a lot of problems with, especially residential properties, sometimes communities, residential apartments, sometimes business properties such as shopping malls, convenience stores, shopping centers, places like that, nightclubs, etc. Trespassing is not a felony in any state that I'm aware of. They might have different levels of it, up to a Class A misdemeanor or first class misdemeanor, but it's generally not a felony. So we have to be mindful as to what type of force we're going to use when we do detain someone. We want to use reasonable at all times and as little as possible. If they're fighting us after we're trying to detain them, then we can escalate that a little bit, depending on what type of force they are using. But just keep in mind that if they run away, let them go. It's not a big felony, it's not a big deal. They'll come back, and then you can, take care of business. But be thoughtful when you are considering about detaining someone, whether or not you have the authority. Every state does not allow people to detain or make citizens arrest. Every state does not have private or special police officers. Many do, over 30, but not everyone. And not every client nor employer wants you to detain someone. They want you to call police. And even if the police never show up or take 3 or 4 hours to arrive, you've done your job. Notate it in your report. Trespassing can be little to nothing, no problem at all. The person hears you, they leave, no big deal. Or it can really wind up in a big brawl, a big fight, knock down, drag out, handcuffing them. I've been involved in those, both in security and law enforcement. The person doesn't want to leave, and unfortunately you have to use force to arrest them or detain them. In closing, I want to just kind of reiterate that you need to know what your employer and client wants you to do in this situation. Really in every situation, but definitely in one where you will be involved in more times than not. What do they want you to do? They're trespassing at the pool and they don't live on the property. Should you just back off and call the police? Should you attempt to detain them? Do you want to give them a verbal or written warning? What does the client and the employer authorize? That's where you got to start. You've got to start with that authorization. And then, if they say try to detain the person and call the police, then you have to understand you have to be reasonable, use reasonable force, use reasonable methods. Hey, dude, I told you you can't be here. I'm going to give you one more chance. Walk out, or you're going to get arrested. You're going to get detained, whatever it might be. Reasonable force. And if they have the upper hand, there's two of them and one of you, and you're not armed, you don't have any less lethal, let them go. Call the police, and maybe they'll come back, or maybe if you already know who they are, you can go get a warrant at the magistrate's office. See a judge. Take care of it that way. Trespassing is minor, but it can also be major. Don't make more out of it than it is, and you always want to stay safe. Most often, security officers work alone, and therein lies the problem. You don't have immediate backup. If they do resist and you get into a big fight, you're on your own until someone else calls 911, or you're able to get onto a radio if you have one, if you're lucky enough, or something, and get some backup. Trespassing. Anytime someone enters the property unauthorized, anytime a person is told to leave the property and doesn't, you can trespass them verbally, in writing, you can detain or arrest and use force when necessary. That kind of wraps up what trespassing is. Really, every state has a different law. You need to become familiar with the laws of your state and also the authority that you have given to you by the state and the client and your employer. That's going to do it for today. You all stay safe, be blessed, and we'll see you back here on the radio.